Good morning and good evening, everyone. I'm Jay Gullish, and I want to thank you for joining USIBC's Rapid Response webinar on the draft MeitY gaming rules. If you're not familiar with our Rapid Response webinars, when there's some big item of news, we try to pull in a knowledge expert as quickly as possible to make our membership and the larger community aware of the issues. In some cases, that's internal. In some cases, it's more informational, as in this case. So I'm really pleased today to have Akhil Anand, who's calling in from New Delhi. He's a partner at JSA, J. Sagar Associates, also the USIBC knowledge partner around gaming. But Akhil is also a real expert on this issue, so we're really pleased to have you here today. As a quick introduction, I think as we all know, in the last several years, India's gaming sector has seen some really significant shifts. From a legitimate business activity that was recognized by the Supreme Court to more recently, the surprise passage of the Promotion and Regulation of the Online Gaming Act, also known as the PROGS Act. And very recently, as of last week, the release of the draft implementation rules, which we'll talk about today and beyond. But really, the gaming sector in India stands at a crossroads. An overnight ban on real money gaming, and there's increased regulation and oversight, but there's also some upsides around measures of clarity, but much more is needed. By drawing a clear line between illegal real money gaming and whether it's skill or chance and esports and social gaming, the legislation does aim to protect consumers, mostly focused on youth, from financial and psychological harm, while unlocking some of the opportunities for growth and investment. And we certainly know that India in the back end has incredible cultural products, but also skill sets that help in the development of these types of products and services. So as stakeholders digest the implications, I'm really pleased to have Mr. Akhil Anand. As I already said, he's a partner at JSA with over 10 years experience in this arena. And he'll provide a short overview of the act and the rules and help us get organized and think about how we want to approach the draft rules and whether or not USIBC may or may not respond. And we'll also learn about India's gaming landscape along the way. So Anand, I actually want to start with something like an icebreaker. Do you have kids? Are they gaming? Are you gaming? What are you playing now?
Well, certainly not. I mean, when I was a kid, I played Mario and all those Super Mario Brothers and games, Pac-Man. But now there's hardly time to play video games. I think it's much better to defend your clients in court rather than playing games.
So you're not playing any games on phones? You're not doing crosswords or any of the sort of quick games, Pokemon Go, while you're sitting in the metro?
To that question, the answer is yes. While waiting for a matter in court, sometimes I may be doing that as well. Pokemon in court, which keeps the mind going at all times.
Wonderful. In my household, we're migrating out of Minecraft into some AI-generated games that my kids are starting to play that I truly don't really understand. All right. Yeah. Let's start with the big picture. Briefly, can you talk about the evolution of the gaming sector over the last decade or so, obviously culminating recently with the PROGS Act and the draft rules from last week?
Yeah. So I'll give you that, as you rightly put it, there's been a legislative history in India as far as the gaming sector is concerned. Primarily, over the last 5 decades, our Supreme Court has distinguished between games of skill and games of chance. A lot of state legislations came in, which were defended in court. They all followed the Supreme Court principle until the last month, when the government came out with this PROGS Act. Now, primarily, if you look at it, there is 2 facets to this act. One is the prohibition, and the other is the regulation of online games. The prohibition is for the real money gaming sector. And I would, in my view, if I would divide this act would have 3 facets to it. One is the online real money game, one is the e-sport, and the other is the social gaming. While for the e-sport and social gaming, the government wants to promote it and regulate it in terms of what the rules are. The prohibition is for the online real money game, negating the entire judicial history, the constitutionality which has been settled over years. So if I would say this, if you draw three parameters or put in three columns, real money game is out of the window. Subject to, of course, there is a recent challenge in the Supreme Court. What happens to that is, we'll come to know. The second is the e-sport, which is going to be governed by the National Sports Governance Act, which is recognized thereunder. The other is the social gaming. So these are the three buckets in which the government has come out with this act. So under the act, so I'll just quickly touch upon the rules, and then I'll just the rules have been as of now framed of put into the the domain and for public comments and all. The rules primarily deal with the procedure of applying for these e-sport and these social gaming, and how the authority can reject it or do it. So they're till the comments come from the industry of how they're perceiving it. But they're, in my view, they're in a very, watery domain right now. They need more tightening, which is required. So, the act and rules, act is, of course, as I told you in the three buckets, the rules are, in a watery domain right now. They have to
Right.
be watertight.
Now, the rules create a slightly different allocation, right? Esports goes to a new ministry, sports and youth, that typically hasn't been involved in domestic activities. And then obviously the social games to MIB. And it creates an online gaming authority as well. Is this a good distribution? Some might say that it adds one more ministry to an already complicated and overlapping set of decision makers. Kind of, what's your thoughts here?
So, Jacob, there is not one, there is not two, there are not three, there are four ministries involved at the end of the day. We have the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, we have the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, then we have the Ministry of Information and Technology, which is involved. Just to take our participants and just a couple of years back, the government actually amended the IT Act, which is the Information Technology Act, to be able to amend and provide relief to the online game providers. So therefore, there are four ministries involved. My take is that this creates more confusion than clarity, because the one arm of the state may not know what the other arm of the state is doing right now. The fact is that because the Ministry of Youth and Sports under the National Sports Governance Act will make the rules for the e-sport, the social gaming will be handled by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, and the MeitY will have to amend its rules because the social game that will be considered as an intermediary. So it's going to be an utter chaos. The third thing which I would, the question about the Online Gaming Authority, if you look at it, the Online Gaming Authority is another regulator in the sense of it, because you're actually going to the regulator's office, to the executive's office, of submitting an application who will take a decision about the facets of your game. The primary task of them is to either, make you as an executive, grant you a certificate as far as esport is concerned, grant you a certificate as far as the social game is concerned, or otherwise take you off if you are an online real game money provider. So that's the role which the authority is playing, and it's utter confusing with no industry expert in them.
Yeah. And in theory, you could have a game that could be both esports and social media, the kind of mixing and blending the both, with or without, some payment in kind that might not be true real money gaming. So very complex, and I could see that being those clear lines actually might inhibit some games from actually coming to India. So you touched upon the Online Gaming Association of India. I mean, AGAWI. But you said that you kind of suggested this might be another layer of bureaucracy, right? So
Right.
What's your thoughts? Is this just another one of these self-regulatory, it's not self-regulatory, but another authority that's looking to handle grievances, or is this something a little different in the current draft?
This is not going to be any different, is what my my take is.
Right.
And I can just go through the past experiences as far as the gaming sector is concerned. The authorities are never a go-getter as far as the business is concerned. Sometimes I feel they act as a deterrent to
Hmm.
enable companies to do business in India. And they've never adhered to timelines which are provided under the act or the rules. It's just it's just more and more complicated, and you'll have another person who will be making the rules. And as I said, from the previous question, if you take it with the number of ministries involved, the documents or the rules will only do a desk A to desk B job rather than getting a finalization done.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the people I've been talking to in the gaming industry were a little shell-shocked. We were at Waves earlier in the year, and there was tremendous excitement in the gaming community, startups galore, hiring, just incredible energy. And now, what happens? What's your take? What are you hearing from people in the gaming industry, kind of, after this new law and the rules?
Uh, Personally speaking, I've had a chance to interact with a number of them on a one-to-one personal basis, and they shell shocked simply because of the
Right.
fact that they're it was an out of the blue jolt. And I'll give you a very small example. I'll take about 30 seconds to tell you. The matter was before the Supreme Court, where the legislative challenges were being heard, and the timeline to file the written submissions was final. And some of the Indian counterparts who may be on the call, they will understand this. And out of the blue came this jolt that all on-rail real money games are banned from from day so and so till it's notified. So the industry was in a shock that there is some of them who've actually given out public statements that we will not challenge this particular ban. There are particular who've challenged it, but
Hmm.
most of them have actually taken a call, uh, not publicly, maybe privately. They're not challenging it right now, or they may not challenge it at all. So they're living with it. They're, and finding out ways of how to deal with it, or now get into the sphere of the esport or the social games,
Right.
and uh, nothing more than that,
So,
because Jacob, it's only been about a couple of, it came out in August. We're just about in October. The rules have just come now. So they don't have clarity also what is
yeah.
happening.
Yeah, I mean, presumably, if your bread and butter or dal and roti, as you might say in India, is real money gaming, then you're very anxious. But if you're not in that segment, you might see this as being empowered because it does recognize esports officially, right? So, what
Hmm.
does that actually mean on the positive side for India's potential to become a real hub for competitive gaming in the esports arena?
See, Jacob, there are two spheres to this question. The dal roti, as you said, are the bread and butter. Uh, the bread and butter or the dal roti for a number of companies was the real money gaming sector. And because it had taken, the major chunk of the market share, the the social gaming or the esport, which was nearly the video games, there was a very small segment which was, catering to it. So it was not a kind of a feeding for all and stuff like that. So when an industry is shut, when the industry is dominating about 80% of the real money gaming market, when it's shut, it takes a certain amount of time for people to adapt to the other sphere of esport and social game. It's going to take time. It may not be a segment or a sector which will cater to those. See, at the end of the day, the real money gaming sector was catering to 18 and above. The other people who were there but was also catering to the lower age group. But the people above 18, that will take some time to go and sink into their mold of what this gaming is particularly about. I believe that it's a roller coaster ride. They were right at the top at the beginning of the year. They're right at the bottom right now. For it to become a global hub, it's going to take a couple of years. It's not going to happen overnight, especially with the so much of a fluid legal scenario in India where laws keep changing all the time. So, with the
Right.
government action. So accordingly, will take
And
some
for
time.
clarity, prior to the law, states regulated some aspects of this, and now all of it's moved to the federal government. Is that my understanding? Is my understanding correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks. I want to invite anyone else to raise hands and ask a question. I have a few more things I'd like to raise with Akhil, but certainly would love to hear from people that are participating if you'd like. Just raise your hand, come on screen, or drop a question in the chat. In the meanwhile, Akhil, there was a lot of money going into India's gaming sector, which was feeding economic growth and hiring. We also saw a lot of money going into some of the back-end skills development. How does PROGS and kind of impact all of that? Is it just a blip, or do you think that it'll change the trend line?
I think for now it's going to change the trend line. I mean, it's not going to be an easy, simpler task as it was earlier happening. You had you had a lot of investments coming in, considering that the legal landscape was clear. People were all pegging on as far as the Supreme Court's decisions were concerned, which was being followed by the high courts all across. They were ready for the investment because they knew they had legal backing. Now they're going to tread cautiously as far as e-gaming is concerned. They will tread cautiously as far as social gaming is concerned. But yes, the mood, if 6 months down the line, will be a better one to answer this, of looking how the investments go. But yeah, as of now, I think the investor sentiment of what I've heard from is at the lowest, probably, as far as the gaming sector is concerned.
Yeah. A question, sort of a similar question about how gaming and the recent action may bleed into other media and entertainment segments. Does sort of the government action around Prague, does it impact any other segment outside of gaming per se, or do we really think it's contained to this piece based on how the government thought there was a problem and needed to move rather quickly to address it?
See, the government's actions were, the preamble to the act, to the PROGS Act, and let me say this, that the government has been, has been canvassing for, terrorism, cyber threats, people losing money in this sector, and stuff like that. So therefore, the reasoning of the government is that I don't see any other sector as of now being impacted. The one which they wanted to impact was under the Data Protection Act, but those rules have been, in the making for years. This was probably one of the swiftest promulgations of an act, if I may say so. And I can, I've heard the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha debate, which is probably one of the first acts to be passed in a jiffy with about 57 minutes of discussion and all.
And came out of nowhere. Left
Yeah,
field, to use an American baseball term.
Yeah, so 57 minutes of not even a discussion, of a presentation and a voting problem. So though there were some members who objected and said this should be sent for public consultation, I'm pretty amazed that how come the rules have come in for public consultation and comments, given the fact that the act was made by them for a particular reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we do have 30 days. October 31st is when the comments are due. Happy Halloween, everybody. What's your thoughts? What are the key areas that you think stakeholders should be thinking about, and how USIBC and the larger community may formally respond?
Okay. So I'll put it in perspective that I probably feel there are 2-3 aspects which need to be taken very carefully. The National Sports Governance Act, which they say will recognize the e-sport, that needs a lot of clarity. That there are
So
more
an amendment to that act in order to adjust to changes in the new rules. Okay.
Correct. Then the amendment to the Information Technology Act, which recognizes I don't think there is any amendment to this. The ministry is going to look into the Ministry of Information Technology is going to look into this. The rules probably have to be amended. Then there is no industry participation or an expert participation in the authority. The authority is headed by a judicial member. It'll be a technical member. It'll be the rank of a deputy secretary in India. They need industry bodies, industry representation on the board to decide about the nature of a game. The rule actually says the authority may call on experts, but with all due respect, that may word is never implemented. You should have an industry expert who will give his views as far as the games are concerned. The other bit is that, the act has more of procedural timelines rather than, providing any. There is a rule, there is a grievance committee. The grievance committee will be formed, you will be heard. But I don't think that, that transpires anything. They should make more stringent timelines, especially in today's tech world. People, if they're wanting to register a game, they will not want to go from the authority from one place to the other. So this actually needs, as far as clarity, as far as esports is concerned, as far as the social games are concerned, as far as the procedures are concerned. So I think it's a very loosely drafted document as of now. And of course,
Okay,
with the data protection coming in, they should take care of all of those things.
right. Well, that's really great insight. I want to see if any of our participants on the line have any questions. Feel free to raise your hand, come on screen, or drop anything in the chat. Going once, twice, thrice. Akhil, this was really thorough. I really appreciate it. The understanding of the rules, the implications is really critical, but also providing the history and the background to how this may shape the gaming sector going forward is very much appreciated. I would like to invite you back to our platform. You said 6 months would be a good time to understand how the rules may or may not impact India's gaming. And I'm going to take you up on that offer. And hopefully it's prior to 6 months, not because we're doing a rapid response webinar, but because we're talking about positive changes that are going to drive India's creativity economy. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording. I want to thank everybody for joining. Wish you good evening and good night. We can stay on a few minutes if anyone wants to share something off the record that we can determine about how USIBC might respond. So with that, thank you all again. Great. So